Jonathan, is this déjà vu all over again? Does this feel like 1996, 97 to you?
Very much so, in many respects, and good afternoon, Peter. So I'm not sure what Yogi Berra would have made of these particular circumstances, but it is fascinating to see how history can potentially repeat itself. But we should have, I think, just a moment to reflect on where we are with the hype of these two important by-elections. Now, let's just say, how important were they? At Wellingborough, you could not see a Conservative member of Parliament or cabinet minister out there in any great strength supporting the local candidate.
Yes, they weren't even really told to go, and you'll know within politics there's usually a grid drawn up saying which cabinet minister is going when.
Yes, absolutely, and the whip's office do all of the backbenchers as well, and the backbenchers don't say no because they know which way it's going to go for them. So you've got all of those aspects there. Kingswood also didn't get an awful lot of attention. The Tories wrote off both of these by-elections. They knew they were going to lose, and there's an interesting argument that says actually, from Conservative HQ, it costs a couple of £100,000 to put out a big team in each, and if you know you're going to get a shellacking, do you go down there?
Why bother?
I think the answer is not. So that's one aspect that we need to bear in mind. The other is the one you've already drawn out with the correspondence. Low turnout, a lot of dissatisfaction. The overall trend of where we're going for the Conservatives is just where we are. Status quo. They're 17, 19, 20 points behind. And therefore, there'll be those on the right of the party who will be saying, hang on, look at what reform has done, as was pointed out in a previous interview. Could they have taken all that away and we could have won? Therefore, Rishi, please get more tax cuts, immigration,
well, Jacob Rees-Mogg is already saying that. He's part of the Popular Conservatives, of course, but even the New Conservatives, another one of these groupings, Miriam Cates and Danny Kruger, saying things have to change.
Yes.
I mean, I think that Rishi Sunak's position is secure until the election. I think they'd be mad to change that, but really there isn't a lot of enthusiasm for him as leader at the moment. Is this just terminal decline? Is there anything that can be done?
There is a mountain that the Conservatives have to climb. My view is that actually as we come closer to the election, and I'm putting by £5 worth, not the 1,000 that Rishi picks up day by day, my £5 is on October and November. I think that's when they'll go. The economy may have improved, and you'll be able to ask that question, do you feel a bit better now than you did before? So there's still a lot to play for, and I think things will tighten considerably. And let's not forget, Labour does still have an awful long way to go to claim back what it lost before.
You're talking, though, about perhaps the polls tightening there, and I think that I agree with you. I think that probably will happen. But at the same time, Labour have been consistently ahead for over 2 years. The Conservatives haven't been ahead in a single poll, any published poll, for over 2 years. I mean, we're just on the glide path to a Labour victory, aren't we?
I believe that we probably are. The question for Sunak and the sensible part of the Conservative Party is this. Do you look for Armageddon, a wipeout, and then you get taken over by the extreme right, probably supported by Reform, because I haven't spoken much about them at the moment, but they're kind of important. Or do you ameliorate things and then allow a sensible centre party still to exist within the Conservative Party? And Sunak's job, I think, if you are asking him now, would be, all right, it may be tough, but let's not give up. Let's hold on to the centre. That's where the ground is won, and we'll stick with it. And if we're looking at the right, forget it, because not every Conservative voter who didn't in the past, did not vote today, went off to Reform. So that's not known at the moment. It can be overstated. Yes. And the other thing I think we could both say, Peter, with a degree of certainty, is that Nigel Farage is going to keep teasing us generally and at a local level in whichever Essex constituency he's thinking about standing in until the last possible moment, just to keep the pressure on. Yes, but we're in for a volatile period. That's absolutely the case.
It's interesting, actually, talking about Reform, because in Wellingborough, Ben Habib, who's the deputy leader, came third. And this is what he had to say about the electoral force that is Reform UK, which has done pretty well, actually, in both these elections.
3 months ago, we polled 5% in Tamworth and slightly less than that in mid-Bedfordshire. And everyone was criticising Reform for not really living up to its polling expectations. Well, yesterday, my colleague Rupert Lowe met our national polling figures in Kingswood, and I beat them by 30% in Wellingborough. So Reform UK has gone from 5% to 13% in 3 months. That's a massive step forward. Electorally, we're going to keep growing. We're going to build on this base. Remember, we're only 3 years old, you know, and I think by the time the general election comes, we're going to be firmly embedded in the electorate psyche as a genuine alternative party for which to vote.
I mean, Ben Habib says that Reform UK are only 3 years old. Technically, he's correct, but of course they emerged from the Brexit Party, which didn't stand in the vast majority of constituencies in 2019. But if you look at Wellingborough last night, 13% is what Ben Habib got. In Kingswood, Rupert Lowe got 10%. Many more votes than the Liberal Democrats in both those constituencies, but also in the national picture in terms of what the polls are saying. Reform UK could well be the third party, at least in terms of a percentage of votes, but that probably won't translate into seats.
Oh, I think that's fantasy politics when people talk about that. I think that you will find that over time, particularly when you come to the general election, that vote will disappear.
You think so?
Because I think it's more a case of people who are approached in the street saying, I'll go for reform, because they want to give the other side...
protest vote,
or a protest vote, and is it translated? And I don't think it is. I think that they will move away. I think perhaps an easier one for quite a large percentage there is to say, actually, we're kind of don't knows. Can we stomach another vote?
Because there are 20% of people in polls who say they are in a don't know, and also how secure, I suppose. We're going to talk to a pollster a little bit later on in the programme in terms of how solid those votes are. I actually want to ask you about something else, which is the big story of the week until these by-elections politically, which is anti-Semitism. Now, Damien Egan, who is the new MP elected last night for Kingswood, said this just didn't come up on the doorsteps. Do you think Labour can draw a line under the huge controversy in the north of England, Rochdale, where there is a by-election in just less than 2 weeks now?
These by-elections have actually been a godsend for Keir Starmer, because they do give a different sense of what's going on. And I don't think actually that people have forgotten about what's happening in Rochdale. There will be concerns about how far the Labour Party has been able to eradicate anti-Semitism, and there are questions again about Keir Starmer's judgment. And I say that because although he says he took decisive action, and
it was not decisive.
Absolutely, you can't, under these circumstances, and I understand the dynamic that he faced. There's a lot of people saying, well, we couldn't just leave the door open for George Galloway. That is inflammatory. The fact is, Starmer has done an incredible amount to get rid of anti-Semitism, and when there's a resurgence of it, I think he's got no other choice than to say, we just cannot accept it. And the chances are, in any case, of grown-up politics, you expect something else to come out. And that is going to capture the moment, and it sets a tenor which Starmer has worked really hard to get rid of. And in those circumstances, it's no risks. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's tough. No, we don't have a candidate. That's it. And we improve. But you have to do it first time. Second time round, he was given a bit of grace.
Well, actually, you're the expert in this, because you ran communications in Downing Street for a number of years, for 6 years. It's interesting, actually, in terms of how this looks, because I used to work in politics, and we always used to say perception is reality. People feel in terms of what they see and what they feel. So in terms of how Keir Starmer handled that, I mean, they were probably always going to win Kingswood and Wellingborough. I've been saying that all week. But actually, does this have I mean, Rochdale's in 2 weeks' time. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But I wonder, from his handling, having been in Downing Street, you've got to make decisions really quickly on very difficult subjects. When they get to that level, it's usually 51-49 in terms of how the decision can go. Is Keir Starmer someone who can make difficult decisions quickly and the right decisions?
He should have acted quicker in these circumstances. I mean, that is just political reality. I'll give you, if I may, one example, lower down the scale. But there was a junior minister in John Major's government towards the end of that government who had said some disparaging remarks about Europe and actually was on the edge. Now, from the time it took us, with the political secretary, the Prime Minister, myself and one or two other people, to walk from the door of the Cabinet room to the front door of Downing Street, that man was fired. That's decision-taking on real speed. And the problem that Keir Starmer's got is that he's a little bit, in some respects, like Barack Obama. It wants to analyse everything to death. Sometimes you need that political antennae and that gut feel that just says, You've got to do this.
Because you can't have all the facts all the time.
You
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
to back yourself for your gut judgment.
Yeah.
And that's where Rishi Sunak misses out, I think, Peter, in a number of respects. He's a bit like Mario Draghi. He's a technocrat. You know, he's not had long in Parliament as a member of Parliament, as a minister, as a prime minister, to get the rough skin, to understand how people in Parliament work, and to have a better understanding of how the people outside London Bridge, where we are today, are thinking about their futures and what they're doing day by day.
I think that's a very good point, Jonathan. I agree. I don't think Rishi Sunak understands his own party, never mind people. But that's a discussion for another day.